please welcome Björn on stage.
Thank you. Thank you for being invited. Transformation, that's the theme of this conference, right? And what is that for us at Alfa Laval? Well, it's a couple of things. It's, of course, connectivity, connected devices. It's online sales, e-business. It's also Industry 4.0, where we have a digital representation of the product and the production line. But the common denominator for us, and I think for many of you out there as well, is really the product and the information about the product and how information about the product will underpin and leverage these digital strategies. So that's what I'm going to talk about. A few words about myself. I'm heading a PLM, Product Lifecycle Management program at Alfa Laval. And we're fortunate enough to have the ears of our top management. So we have our CFO as project sponsor, which really helps because it's all about change, you know that. I have a background, marketing, R&D, product management, a little bit of IT. I'm not an IT guy, but I've learned what I think I need to know about IT here. My company, you may know it, we help our customers to heat, cool, separate, transport liquids. That's essentially what we do. And you will find our products in many, many different places, but you will not probably see them as a consumer unless maybe you have a district heating in your basement. That could be a heat exchanger from Alfa Laval. Otherwise, you will find them in, oil refineries, you find them on board ships and so on and so forth. So we are a bit all over the place. We are a reasonably sized company, about 3.5 billion euro turnover last year, which was not very good. We still enjoy a healthy margin, 15-16%, about 17,000 people globally. These are our products, and they look like technical stuff, and it is technical stuff. It's really classical products. It's components. So this one up here, this one up here is a heat exchanger. It's almost half of what we sell, helping to sort of conserve energy and heat recovery and all that. This is a valve, we have pumps and valves, we have the classical separator equipment, but in general, it's component business. Okay? And we're truly global, which doesn't help when you're working with PLM, I can tell you that, because there's many local sort of dialects of the product. So we have about a third of our sales in Asia, quarter in Western Europe, and then it's spread all over. So that's about my company. Now, we have a very large product offering, and that's good, I think. So what's the problem? Well, the assortment grows in some areas up to 10% each year, and very little gets phased out. We have a strong suspicion, or now we know, that part of it doesn't really sell. We also know that there is a cost to maintain this assortment. We didn't know how much at the time, now we know. And of course, there's quality issues because we have so many things. So it's difficult to keep everything up to date, especially, when you expose it in an e-channel. It has to be correct, right? And there is added complexity in sales and so on and so forth. And we're about to launch this major PLM initiative. So do we really need to have all these products? Let me show you an example of product line A. We have 350 product variants. The red curve shows how many of those we have sold the last 20 years. The blue curve is the cumulative, and you can see that 80% of the sales comes from 20% of the variants. Perfect example of 80-20 rule, right? Then you find that 96% comes from 50% of the variants. So in hindsight, if we had only half of the assortment, we would have gained almost 100% of sales, right? And 100% comes from 85% of the variants. So that means there are 15% variants that we have never ever sold. They could have been released last week, some of them, yes, but I'm sure that there are many that were released some time ago. Now looking at the spare parts for the same product line, it's even more accentuated. So 80% of the sales now comes from 2% of the parts. And for this product line, we have about 25,000 spare parts. That's maybe not so surprising because some of these spares are typical wear parts. You know, they wear down, so you have to replace them. Think about a tire for a car, for instance, these kind of things. But if you look here, 100% comes from 52, let's say 50%. So that means 50% of these spare parts have not moved since 2005. That's not good. So yes, there is a problem. We also looked into, okay, it costs to maintain a product assortment. You can Google it. You will find information from US Department of Defense, and it tells you that it costs $2,000, $3,000 a year to maintain one article number. We didn't believe in that. I cannot tell you what we found, but I can say that it costs not a single digit, not a double digit. It costs a triple digit euro per year and per part to maintain. That's basically data maintenance, but again, we have compliance coming in. We talked about GDPR. It's not for products, but we have similar demands coming in. You need to do things with the assortment. We also found that about a quarter of all this cost, and just a quarter, sits within R&D. That was a bit surprising because you think R&D owns the products and they maintain it. Well, yes, but manufacturing is another quarter. And for us as a manufacturing company, we have tools that we have to maintain, which is another quarter, and then it's kind of distributed here. So, given the fact that this is at least 3 figures, we have at least 500,000 we call active parts. That's a lot of money, especially if part of it doesn't sell, right? So then we went on to say, why do we have this large assortment? Well, we've had a innovation, time to market focus the last 10, 12 years. I think you all do. I mean, it's innovate or die, right? We haven't had a phase-out focus. Acquisitions, yes. And then I added a few quotes here. Add this while you're at it. If we are running a new product development project, you might as well add a few variants because, you know, you have the momentum. Yes, there may be a small cost to do it then, but if you happen to sell and you need to maintain spare parts and so on and so forth for maybe 40 years, you all of a sudden add a lot of costs. Classical argument, we need this to sell that. I think that's quite common. It's true in some senses. We've also been able to sort of demonstrate that even if you have this, you didn't sell that, or you didn't even quote this, but you still sold that, you know. And yes, we can. That's very positive. Customer orientation, all that. But sometimes maybe we should say, yes, we can, but, you know, we have this new model that we think you should buy instead of maybe supplying spare parts for forever and ever. And then finally, I don't see any savings if I phase out. I've been there myself, R&D manager, you keep adding stuff. Factory tells me, you have to phase out, but yeah, show me the savings. And you can't, because you have to look at the very holistic picture. So we got directives from our group management then that this PLM program is fine, we need to do it. But first of all, you basically have to wash out, that's the term we use, and get to work now before the PLM. And by the way, make sure it's sustainable. But how? I mean, you know, we have no central repository for parts of products. We have a variety of ERPs for our production units. We're not very good at master data. We don't really have standards for terms such as Lifecycle States. Product groups are decentralized. And above all, we don't have any phase-out culture. So now we were faced with change management, technical challenges, and you can say standard challenges. So it's a lot about the transformation in a way, but it may not be digital as such. So what steps did we take? Well, first of all, we had to define, communicate. So together with Wipro, we set up a methodology here. We set up some business rules saying like, if you haven't sold the last 10 years, it's a candidate for phase out. And we defined our lifecycle states once and for all. discover and design, then we had to look at what data sources do we have, what's the data structure in those sources, do we understand it, and then together with Wipro, or rather Wipro helped us to build a BI data warehouse solution. Analyze and decide, so we had a methodology there. We are quite morbid, so we spoke about who is already dead, who should be dead. So people were a bit like, "Ooh, who's that coming here and murder us?" But that's the sort of language we used. And then, of course, it's the execution. So once you have decided to actually take things away, there's a lot of updates to be done in systems and documents and web contents and God knows what. For the standardized lifecycle states, maybe not that interesting, but to finally get an agreement in this company where we have strong decentralization, that was actually an achievement. So for products, we have basically two states. Either it's current, meaning we sell it, or we don't sell it and it's obsolete. And many of our products we have about 10 to 15 years, right? That was in the past. In the future, I think we will need to keep them for a shorter period. For the parts, yes, it can be in production if it's used for selling this. But then, when this is phased out, the part goes into what we call spare part state. And that could stay for 25, 40 years. We will all be retired by then, right? But that's a lot of money for us if we have the right spare parts. But to keep that information for that long period, that's a challenge. Okay, so a few words about the solution then. We found a number of data sources, and typically these were ERP systems in different factories. And of course, there were different ERP systems. You name an ERP system, we have it, I'm sure. Except SAP. Actually, we don't have. But that's just a matter of time, I'm sure. We have, in a few cases, a proper PDM system, product data management. But in many cases, we have what I call proxy. It's Excel files, it's Access databases, it's, maybe some homegrown systems. But we have them. And we have an installed base, which is reasonably okay. So we defined then sort of data extracts, and this were just Excel files coming from these systems, going into this BI solution. We call it the magic box. So we had set up business rules that were operating then on transactions, so we could see movements, operating on the bill of materials, and of course asking what the life cycle state of the parts and products out here, what they were, right? So based on these business rules and the programming that we had done in the magic box, we then got proposals. And it could look like this. For products, you remember, we had two life cycle states, current or obsolete. And of course, this was based on the business rules we defined, yeah? For the parts, could be in production, only spare part, or terminate. So this was quite neat, because all of a sudden, the, let's say, product authority, which is normally our product management, can take a decision based on facts instead of gut feeling. And I think you need to combine the facts with gut feeling, because it's not just mathematical. So those decisions were then fed back, again via Excel, into the magic box, where we'll make updates again via scripts to these systems. But this achieves the target that we had for the washout, and I will show you some results in a few minutes. Then we reuse the magic box again, because when we go into the migration phase, going into our PLM solution, there's a lot of data to be moved, of course, from these guys out here. So again, we make data extracts. Now we have a migration tool. Again, we're working very closely with Wipro on this one, where we basically, can transform the data, cleansing, enhancement. We have to add CAD files, documents, material standards, a lot of things that we need to add here. And then we load that into our PLM system. And we are working with the Team Center program from Siemens. At the same time, of course, we can close these proxy PDMs. So that's the second use case now of this magic box. And the third use case is when we have the PLM system in place, we have done the initial washout, we have the PLM in place. Now we have also said you need to have an annual assortment review. So again, we're making extracts. Again, we have proposals, we have an authority deciding on them, and now these decisions are then fed into the PLM system. And of course, as part of what we're doing now, we set up also processes and system integrations. So we have a solid communication back to the source systems via what we call engineering change process. And all of a sudden, we have a central control of the lifecycle states. Yeah? So we have 3 different use cases of this one. And we didn't really realize that when we started this, but it's kind of cool, I think. So some of the results, again, I cannot show you figures, I show you percentage. Product line B, we started out with the total population, 67% of all variants were considered to be active or semi-active. We cut that down by 20% to about half, and nobody protested. Well, very few. There were a few salespeople that protested, but I mean, basically we said, yeah, we will not even notice it in the top line. In the bottom line, we will see it because of savings. For the parts, it's even more. We went from about 70% considered to be active down to 20 in production 9, so say 29%. This is a reduction of 60%. And I can tell you that the number of parts that we don't have to maintain from between here and here, it's more than 100,000 parts that we don't have to maintain. So you can imagine that's a lot of money to be saved in this one, yeah? So some of the business benefits, we get savings, yes, because less maintenance. We also now have a consolidated view of the assortment. We know what sells, we know what doesn't sell. Should we do something with this thing that doesn't sell? Maybe not phase out, maybe we do a campaign instead. And we have an analytics tool that's really a potential goldmine. Indirectly, we have also now realized that we have to take a much tougher stance against introducing new variants as part of your new product development. Finally, we have an agreement for how long we should keep spare parts. Before it was indefinite, and some people said, oh, I thought that was phased out. No, I sold it yesterday, you know. And all of a sudden, what looked like a good business case became very costly and we lost money, yeah? And we also see that this BI solution now is an excellent basis for starting to consolidate the supplier base, which gives even more savings. For the one PLM program, of course, number of parts to be dressed up, I said it's definitely less. I mean, we have removed at least 100,000 parts. We don't have to dress up. And dress up basically means somebody needs to spend X minutes per part, cleaning, enhancing data, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, that's really something that we thought we would have to deal with this. Now it's only this. It's still a lot, but nevertheless. We gained a much better understanding of the data structures in the source systems. It will make the migration easier, still not easy. And boy, did we uncover lots of exceptions. More exceptions than rules almost. So it's an excellent starting point, I think. So, summary, the title of my presentation was Get to know the true nature of your product assortment and gear up for phase out. It was really an eye-opener here. So we have seen now that excuse me, where the BI solution really helped, not just to do the initial washout, but to gain more commercial insights and eventually will help in the migration as well. So it's not an exaggeration to say that all of a sudden now we have basically a self-financing PLM program. And I don't know how many of you out there have run a PLM program, but you know, it doesn't come cheap. It's quite costly. But now we have managed to basically have a way to, well, on the same order we can say finance this PLM program. And that's the end of my presentation. So, thank you.
Before any questions to you, I would like to ask from the audience, how many of you think that you have a similar situation if you look at the charts in the beginning of the presentation? How do you feel that you have a similar kind of case in your product line? Yeah, I can recognize at least from our media products line. Questions to Björn? Over there.
You mentioned physical products here. Do you also deliver services, and have they been part of this PLM?
It's a very good question. We do deliver services, but it's only the physical things that we have considered in this one, in this study.
How long time did it actually took you from you got this insight to actually got the final results of the program?
Sorry, could you
For how long time did this program run?
It's difficult. What we call a product line. A product line typically have a turnover of 2 to 300 million euros. It takes about half a year to do this exercise.
All right, that's not much actually.
No.
No.
In fact, it's not so much involvement from the business until finally they have to decide.
Thank you.
In the front here.
Thank you. You mentioned during your presentation it's hard to, you said, I can't see the cost benefits of phasing out the product. Did this program render in a different economical structure? Because the decisions made, you must be able to see that it affects theirs.
Right. No, it hasn't done that yet. But I'm sure it will. But it's also, I mean, since the savings is largely in manpower, you have the alternative of save, basically meaning get rid of people, or keep people and let them work with more value-adding stuff. So saving, maybe cost avoidance is a better word in one respect.
Thank you.
One more here. The same table.
Björn, there were a lot of parts not going anywhere for an awful long time.
Yes.
What was the trigger to this program actually happening? So why did it take so long before this very effective program took off?
The trigger is the e-business initiative we really sort of geared up 5-6 years ago. That was the trigger. I think this had been known in the past, but you know, as I said, there was this innovation, new stuff focus all along, but it was really the fact that we exposed a lot of crappy data to some end customers and a lot of our distributors, and they complained. And I understand that they complained.
Okay. No more questions, so big hand to Björn. Thank you. Thank you.